The entire underground would shake and rumble as everybody could sense the arrival of Malito in his new form. More than that, everybody could see the flesh serpents that were surrounding Malito's body, a total of 8 of them. Yuji and Toji in particular were able to sense how many souls made up those flesh serpents. Over 10,000 souls were put into it, and such a massive amount of curse energy. Even someone like Yuta Akotsu had a boundless amount of curse energy had to acknowledge just how much was there. Of course, it was still smaller than him, but still. Even Kenjaku was a bit amazed. Malito was more than ready in order to start the culling games. He just needed to get to him on time in order to start it. But he'd allow the others to do the work for him in order to get Malito. The flesh serpent in the center opened their mouth, showing Malito's true body. Before Malito then said, "I am going to kill each and every single last one of you here, and turn all of you into my weapons. Then I'm going to target Geto next. But let's see how well all of you can do." Toji's eyes widened for a second as he blinked in surprise, realizing that he had just said Geto, but he didn't have much time to focus on that. As 2 of the flesh serpents opened their mouths, a massive glow of curse energy coming from both of them, a move inspired from the finger bearer, as they both launched out a massive burst of curse energy right towards Nagumo and Toji. Both of them immediately moving out the way as it caused a massive crater to form in the ground. While they were mid-air though, Toji said, "You know, Malito said something about there not actually being a sorcerer that can turn off curse techniques that you have. Wanna explain that?" And when the 2 of them landed, Nagumo couldn't help but laugh a little bit as she said, "Okay, I might have lied a little bit, but this is actually more to your benefit. I do have something that can turn off curse techniques, it's just not a sorcerer. But it's much easier to threaten a sorcerer and force you to do what I want than it would be to actually tell you what it was. So, yeah. You know, wanted to conceal power and all that." As Nagumo quickly hopped into the shadow, seeing the serpent start to rapid fire several bursts of curse energy right towards them, all at that same power as it was before, forcing Toji to repeatedly start moving off of air in order to dodge, jumping off air so many times that it was looking like he was flying casually. A glare also formed at Toji when he heard that from Nagumo, but at the same time, that did make sense. Still, it was annoying, as he then said, "Okay, what do you have in mind?" However, he didn't get an immediate response, as instead he saw 4 of the serpents immediately open their mouth, all of them focused on Toji to try and force him to not be able to dodge. But Toji sensed a disruption in the air, as a red lightning bolt flickered past them, remembering that was one of the participants who had fought in the tournament, Riku. Not just that, Riku was currently operating at a higher state of his potential thanks to landing a black flash of Yuji earlier, as he kicked away 2 of the 4 serpents before returning back to a red lightning bolt and flickering off, allowing Toji to dodge the other 2 barrages of curse energy rather easily. Several eyes began to sprout on Malito's new form, looking around and now tracking Riku's movements, as well as tracking Toji's movements in order to make him be able to predict them both better. He was also making sure to keep eyes on the shadows to see whenever Nagumo came out. However, as one of the eyes opened, they saw a fist from Yuji burst right through it, breaking that eye completely. Not just that, but causing a huge dent in the side of the serpent he punched. Malito blinked as he felt that dent, before he focused the serpent, one of the serpents, and turned around and fired a multitude of curse energy blasts right in Yuji's direction. But instead of moving backwards away from the serpent, Yuji chose to jump on top of it. He was now starting to try and run towards where he saw Malito. And when one of the flesh serpents tried to chase after Yuji from behind in order to bite down on him, Riku manifested beside it and palm struck it away. Toji at the same time hopped off air in order to start trying to get towards the flesh serpents. But they were releasing rapid bursts of curse energy, trying their best in order to keep Toji away. 4 of the serpent heads were currently focused on Toji, with 1 being focused on Yuji, while Riku was covering Yuji in order to make sure he could get to Malito. Out from 2 of the serpent's mouth, transfigured humans were launched towards Toji. Both of them had 10 souls compounded into them each, in order to act as additional pressure while the serpents continued to fire on him. Thankfully, it wasn't Malito's curse energy pool that was being sacrificed in order to do this. At the same time instead, while one of the serpents had prepared to fire on Yuji, underneath Yuji, Malito himself rose up. While Riku moved in order to cover Yuji against one of the serpent heads, Yuji noticed Malito rising up. As Malito then said, "If you wanted attention, Itadori, you just had to ask," as he reshaped his arm, shaping into that of a battering ram, while at the same time Yuji focused curse energy towards his fist. And the 2 clashed blows, both of them landing a black flash at the same time. Once the 2 of them clashed, they were completely launched away from each other and destroyed the serpent in the process. 7 still remained, while Riku quickly moved behind Yuji and stopped his momentum, catching him. While this was happening, Toji was battling up against 2 transfigured humans, and he was dealing with them with relative ease so far, deflecting their blows and throwing one of them right towards one of the serpents that fired a blast of curse energy towards him. He then used a slow split katana in order to cut through the other transfigured human, eliminating them with relative ease before he saw an opening on Malito and took it. closing the distance between the two of them in a matter of seconds. And when he attempted to cut Malito in half again, Malito split up into several smaller Malitos. And Toji blinked a bit, not expecting that, but even more than that, all 7 of the serpent heads came down towards him and each fired a massive curse energy blast right towards Toji, as Malito then returned back to the mouth of one of the serpent heads. Toji was launched tens of feet backwards, but he was able to stop himself, landing next to Yuji and Riku. Toji then looked over and said, "You know where your boss is?" Riku shook his head no. However, as he was doing that, Nagumo rose out from Riku's shadow. Before she said, "I was just getting something. Plus, I wanted to have a little bit more time to analyze what Malito is capable of now, so let's use guys as guinea pigs. Sorry about that." Yuji, Toji, and Riku all gave Nagumo an unimpressed face. At the same time, though, Riku shrugged. He shouldn't be too surprised at that. They were expecting Malito to launch out more attacks by this point, but when they looked over, they saw somebody else was already facing off against him, and they each felt a massive amount of curse energy. And for someone like Toji who couldn't feel that curse energy, he could feel that pressure. Before he smirked a little bit, sensing Rika's emergence. Yuta had now placed on his ring, and was currently facing off against Malito with a fully manifested Rika active. Currently, Yuta didn't have too many curse techniques in storage, only really having access to curse speech. Still, against a cursed spirit like this, that was going to be more than enough. And Yuta was more so doing this in order to stall for them to come up with a plan. While Yuta could use reverse cursing on a cursed spirit normally in order to overwhelm them and kill them, he needed to directly reach Malito. And considering Malito was completely surrounded by humans right now, it was near impossible. Though when they looked over to Nagumo, they saw that she seemed to be carrying some type of dagger. It was incredibly small, but Toji was able to near instantly recognize it as his eyes widened while he looked over to Nagumo. And he couldn't help but question where she found that. As Nagumo said, "Well, we always did talk about how the inverted spear of heaven looked a little bit broken. So I tried finding the other side of it, and created a dagger from it. So here you go." She passed it over to Toji. "I want that back after we free Gojo, by the way." This is the ultimate counter to Mahito's technique. A part of them wondered if it would turn those humans back to normal, but Toji doubted it. At the very least, they'll remove the control that Malito has over them. And all 4 of them knew their role now. They were going to need to get as close to Malito as possible. Once they did, and once they stabbed the inverted spear of heaven into him, they'd all be able to attack at once and finish Malito off. And with them all having an understanding of the plan, they all began to rush right towards Malito. Yuta, seeing that they all had a plan ready, quickly activated Cursed Speech. While at the same time, 2 of the serpent heads opened their mouths, both of them firing out a massive burst of stomach acid right towards Yuta. Or at least they were about to, until a red lightning bolt streaked right past them and palm struck both of them, deflecting them in order to make sure they didn't hit Yuta, before he flickered out again, transmuting his body into lightning. As Yuta then said, "Stop," resulting in Malito as well as several of the other serpents stopping in their tracks. Riku, just barely on time, was able to move out of the range. As Rika on one hand sliced through one of the flesh serpents, completely destroying it, while at the same time Yuji landed on the other side of the flesh serpent and landed a black flash, destroying it in one go. At the same time, on one of the other flesh serpents, several slashes were landed by Nagumo, looking like a cyclone of chain and slashes before it was torn completely apart by her. And Malito was looking as he saw his machinations being completely destroyed, but his body was completely frozen, unable to move. As on one end, Yuta was rushing down towards where Malito was, but on the other, Toji had closed the gap rather fast, before he took out the inverted spear of heaven and stabbed it right into Malito's chest. Not just forcefully deactivating Malito's true form, but also deactivating all of the serpents that were under his control, resulting in the human souls that made up those serpents dying. Malito's eyes widened as he realized his technique was deactivated. How? What did they just do? From what he knew, he shouldn't have access to the inverted spear of heaven anymore, but he didn't have much time to focus, as Toji took out the split soul katana, while at the same time Yuta prepared to slice Malito in half. This was very bad. While it didn't remove any of the soul changes Malito had made previously, it did remove his ability to control them mentally. And with the inverted spear of heaven, Malito had no choice but to do what he was about to do. He intentionally ripped the part of his body out that had the inverted spear of heaven in it, damaging his soul to quite a heavy extent, while at the same time launching himself away, just narrowly dodging both of their strikes. Things were going really bad, much worse than Malito was expecting. All of his preparations, everything he had done in order to prepare to face off against Toji was for nothing. Sure, in this new form he was able to push Toji, but he wasn't able to kill him. And Toji was moving at full speed, Soul Split Katana active, the inverted spear of heaven in his other hand. He was determined to finish Malito off once and for all. Yuji and Yuta were trailing right behind him, trying to make sure they could back him up just in case. But then Toji felt something off, a disruption in the air. No, a disruption in space. As all around them, several cursed spirits began to manifest, forcing Toji to have to change his plan, as he took out the chain of 1,000 miles and began to pierce through all the cursed spirits in an instant. And Yuta's eyes widened in that moment as he realized exactly who that was, a rage entering into him. How in the hell was he still alive? And they each saw the body of Suguru Geto, someone that they all believed to be dead, starting to approach Mahito, while at the same time more and more curses were rising.